Hello, everybody. Welcome to another podcast. My name is JJ Vola. Alongside here's my co-host Cal Vola. Today we have a special guest, Michael Domenichetti, which has been my real estate agent since I've been born. He's been in our family for quite a long time. He's known my father, and I'm so grateful to have him on the podcast because he's going to talk to us about what it's like to be a real estate agent, especially in Ontario. Thank you, Michael, so much for being a part of the podcast and joining this show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's going to be a lot of fun today. So
yeah, thanks
for the opportunity. I love doing this kind of stuff. I love sharing, what it's like to be a realtor, the path to becoming a realtor. So anytime people have questions, I'm more than happy to jump in and help out. And to be able to be on the show is going to be a lot of fun.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. So take us through a younger journey of you. Where did you grow up? What schools did you go to? Just to kind of get a little backstory of where you came from and why you got into real estate.
Okay, so 51 now. We're gonna go way back. way
you got all the stories.
Oh, I got lots of stories. So, I got into real estate kind of by accident in a weird way because my dad was a realtor, and we were flipping a lot of houses. So we do 1-2 flips a year, doing a lot of renovations and stuff. So I thought, I'll get my real estate license so I can have access to the info. And I can sell my own flips, and that way I can kind of have the inside track. Got my license, and in the first year I sold like 8 houses.
Wow.
Yeah, and I blew out my back.
Oh my goodness.
And I was still working full time. So I was like, oh man, this is going to kill me if I keep doing the flips. And if I'm a realtor, I can still find the deals and just pay other people to do the work. So I'll start focusing on the real estate side of things. Started doing that and then got fired because my boss was like, dude, you're not here. Like, you're checked out. Just go do your real estate stuff. I was like, okay, great. So I just got back from my honeymoon. My wife's pregnant and I don't have a job. This is awesome.
Now, what year would that have been when you got your real estate license?
So 2008. I actually got my real estate license on my mom's birthday, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Cool.
And so the first year I was sort of transitioning. I was still working full time and got married, and life was just insane and crazy, which it always is. It has not stopped or slowed down at all.
Right.
And I don't know how it happened so quickly, just maybe because I have a really good network of people that I'm connected to. Also, I've been in sales like 10 years prior to getting into real estate. So I understood right away that the most important thing about building any business is the people. And like day one, first thing I did, I just started going through my phone. I went through like Facebook and all my social channels. And I'm like, okay, who do I know? And I started getting their information and putting it together in a database. And very quickly, I was able to start connecting with a lot of people. And people were like, oh, you're doing real estate? Great. Oh, yeah, we're looking to buy a house. I want to buy an investment. And it just kind of picked up and started snowballing very quickly from there.
And then previous to that, so you said you had a job as you were getting into real estate. What was that job just before?
Yeah, so I was in sales. So if I back up to my first sales job, I actually worked in the automation industry. I went to school for instrumentation and PLC programming and got a job in that field as a technician, and then moved into sales. So I was doing sales for technical products. So I was selling to like the big car manufacturers and food plants and all that kind of stuff. And then I got a job working in a packaging machine place where I was selling packaging machines all over Canada.
Wow.
Which was really awesome because I got to travel all over the world on somebody else's nickel, which is really neat. Like, I've been to Iceland, I've been to Italy a bunch of times, and Spain, and like all kinds of cool places.
Wow.
Yeah,
cool.
So it was really fun. And then I was like, the travel's getting to be a bit much. I got to settle down. I've got a wife and, kids on the way. So let's find a way I can do sales and be home all the time.
Sure.
Like, well, duh. Dad's in real estate. We're flipping houses. Getting my license just made a whole lot of sense.
It's so funny how, you went to school for that stuff, and then now you're into real estate and whatnot. And that's like so true for so many people, is they go to school for one thing and then they, get a job in that field. And then eventually they're like, you know what, this actually makes way more sense. So I'm going to go over here, try this out. And selling 8 houses in your first year is pretty incredible. I mean, is that normal for a realtor?
That is not normal.
Okay.
I don't want to, have anybody have any disillusions as to real estate being really super easy, because it's not. In fact, the stats are that 80% of people that get their real estate license are out of the business in the first 24 months.
Wow.
It's staggeringly high.
Sure.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is? Just obviously not enough sales? Do you think a lot of people dive into it too fast? Should they do it at more of like a side thing first, build up their clientele, and then go in for it? Or
yeah, I think it comes down to the mindset. For me, it's always about the mindset. And, being in sales is something that you learn. It's a skill. Right? Nobody's born, in my opinion, a natural salesperson. You have to understand the craft of selling, and you can train and you can read books and go to seminars and school and all that kind of stuff to help you become a salesperson. And then once you understand how to sell, you can apply that to whatever it is that you're selling. And I find a lot of people come into real estate and they're really great people and they have great intentions, but they really don't understand the sales process and they can't put those pieces together. And in real estate, you have to wear a lot of hats. So if you don't understand how to be able to switch hats and help people through the sales process, I think that's where people really struggle the most.
right.
Wow.
Now, obviously, with me being in car sales, I look at real estate a whole different way. Would you say that you help guide people to buy, or is it more of a, are you trying to leverage them to buy, or are you just trying to make sure it's like a right purchase for them? Like, what is it about the sales in real estate that you're trying to convince that person to buy the house?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I really do strongly feel that my job as a realtor, I'm an advisor. Right? I'm not there to sell them on anything. I'm there to help them get through the process. Right? I know our transaction sheets, when I've got my checklist, there's like 160 different things that I go through when I'm helping somebody buy and sell a house.
Right.
It's a huge list of things. And I do it every day. So I know what to look for. I know who to call. I know how to get through the process and do things in the right order. If you've never bought or sold a house before, how do you know? Right? You don't. So this is why I feel my job is an advisor and a guide for people. I'm not there to sell them and be like, oh, you need to buy this house. You need to sell your house. This is what you need to do. I'm there just to provide them information and help them make the best choices, giving them that information.
I'm sure that's what a lot of mistakes or problems that happen with newer real estate agents. They come into it and they're pressuring the buyer to buy the house, or saying that you need this house, not necessarily for the right reasons, but for the, real estate's pocket, obviously, because, they want to make the sale, right? They don't want to waste their time, I'm sure, too, because, how many houses did you and I go and look at before buying this house, right?
Just a couple.
But that's just what it takes, right? I mean, you don't really think about it. And in that time, I'm not necessarily thinking about your time, but you're always there for me, educating me, like, this house, is going to require a lot of work. And that's why I love having you as a real estate agent, because I feel like if I had a younger buck, I'd be like, I'm not educated as, my first time home buying, or what I can get and what I'm eligible for. And, you and I walked through all that too. So, I appreciate you.
Oh, I love you too, man. That's awesome.
That's great.
All joking aside, that's one thing I really do pride myself on, is that I really work hard to help people understand why they're doing what they're doing. Not just saying, you should buy a house, you should buy this house, let's just sign the paperwork, sign here, press hard, and move on. I'm not the transactional kind of guy. It's important for me to transact. For me, it's more about helping people understand the entire process to make them feel comfortable. I don't want to get to the end of the process and people be like, I don't know what I just did. I don't know what I just signed, but I guess I bought a house.
Sure.
I want them to walk away and be like, oh my God, you were amazing. I totally feel great about this whole experience. I know I've made a good decision. And I think that shows up for me in the end too, because like 90% of my business is repeat and referral.
Sure.
I don't do a lot of the traditional lead generation stuff because I've got a big database that I service and I get a lot of repeat business. So I think that speaks for itself as to the mindset behind the process of, work really hard, take great care of people, and then the business will take care of itself moving forward.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're, funny to say it, but you're probably seeing younger generations from the people that you've helped out too, right? Like if you take you and I, for example, I mean, you were with my dad, a lot of his real estate purchases, right? And now I'm sure you're seeing younger generations of those parents that you've already helped coming through. So it's like compounding interest almost.
Yeah, it really is. And you know what's funny? I actually did this with a deal that I tracked recently. So my dad helped a couple, and it was one of the very first open houses he ever did, like 25 years ago. He helped them sell their house. They moved to Montreal. They ended up moving back from Montreal to Burlington. He helped them buy the house and stayed in touch with them. So then their son grew up. He bought a house, and then they bought a house to flip. So I got my license and I helped with the flip house. So I list the flip house for sale. So now we're up to 4 deals between the house they sold, the house they bought, the son bought the house they flipped. So we helped with the purchase, also 5, because we sold the house they flipped. During the process of selling the house that they flipped, I met a couple. I put their house up for sale. When that house was listed for sale, I met a young girl. She bought 3 rental properties, and I helped both of her sisters and her mom buy a house. All of a sudden, like from one open house my dad did 25 years ago, there's like 10 transactions wrapped up in that one relationship.
Right.
So that's why I tell people, like in sales, you can never underestimate any relationship that you have, because you might be looking at it and saying, well, you know, I'm not going to make any money from this, or I don't see where this is going to lead to anything. But if you still take really great care of those people, you don't know where that relationship's going to go in time.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the lifetime value, you know, of a customer, you know, and it's so important to treat all of your customers with a ton of respect and take the time with them and go through the process and create as much value as you can, you know, with all these guys. And kind of going back to your point earlier of making sure that, you know, customers are happy and whatnot. And obviously with the recent increase in real estate and the prices and the demand and people going over asking and all that kind of stuff, having like buyer's remorse, you know. I mean, I feel like people bought a lot of property, you know, they felt pressured like they had to, perhaps. And what's kind of your take on, you know, that increase and that, I guess the demand for real estate and going over asking and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's crazy. Actually, last year I was telling people not to buy houses. I'm like the dumbest realtor out there because I'm like, don't buy this house because you're going to regret paying way over asking for it in 6 months or a year when the interest rates go up. And people are like, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll just wait and see. And so I actually told people don't buy right now. And I've had people that have investment properties and they're like, oh, you know, the market's changing. Maybe we're going to sell. I'm like, no, don't sell just because the prices are up. If you don't have to sell, like, yeah, you're going to cash out and you're going to make a little bit of money today, but you're going to lose out on all this future money because once you sell it, you can never make any more money from it. So I'm telling people not to sell their investment properties and I'm telling buyers not to buy. And I'm like, wait a minute. I know it's really good advice, but it's hard for me to pay my bills. So, but at the end of the day, those people came back and they were like, oh my God, that was such great advice. I really appreciate you guiding me through this insane market because, you know, this house is listed for 500 and people are paying 8. Like, what is going on? And I think that's just the experience and talking to people like my dad, who's been in the business for 25 years and he's seen a couple of different market cycles. And, you know, some other guys I know, they've been in the business for 30, 40 years. I'd sit down and talk to them and be like, what do we do? Like, how do we navigate this? And they'd be like, oh, this is what happened last time. This is probably what's going to happen again. So just buckle up and be prepared for it.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's not easy when you're in the moment. And I think trying to think long term all the time, I'm always thinking big picture. Like what can I do to help set my people up for success long term that I know is going to come back and help me as well. So gratefully last year I didn't have any people that came back and were like, okay, so I bought this house and now I can't afford it. And, you know, I bought this house and now I'm upside down. What am I going to do? Sure. So I didn't have any people in that situation. So I'm very grateful that I don't have to deal with that mess now. And I know people that are. And it's really difficult right now for a lot of people.
Yeah, people get scared. I mean, especially, I'm sure even people who bought houses 5 years ago having to renew their mortgages or whatever their terms were, right? And I've heard a lot of people, their payments are going up like crazy, almost $1,000 a month, in some cases, right? So it gets scary. Even like me, I wanted to sell halfway through COVID because I was like, why not? You know, you see all these houses going left, right, and center, almost double than what I paid for my house. It just didn't make sense, right? But then I'm like, where am I going to move to? Unless I move 2 hours away or I up my own budget, right? So, yeah, it's crazy. And I feel so bad for people wanting to buy a house now.
It's pretty tough. Yeah, it's really tough, and it's not going to get any easier anytime soon.
Right.
I think, people got to buckle up, and maybe they're going to have to really shift their expectations as to what they're getting into now, and they're going to have to do things that they don't necessarily want to do to get into a house. For example, when I bought my first house, it was in the year 2000, and it sounds crazy, but we bought a detached house in Burlington for $156,000. I was like, oh my God, this is so much money. What are we doing? This is crazy. And now I was like, oh, I wish I bought 10 of them on the street, but we didn't do that. At the time, I couldn't afford to buy a house on my own. I was on my own. I wasn't married, and my sister wanted to buy a house. She couldn't afford to buy a house on her own. So we got together and we bought a little bungalow that had the side door entrance, and we gutted the basement with the help of my parents, and we put a nice little apartment down there. And I lived down there for 7 years. And, is it ideal when you're 28 years old and you're dating and, trying to set up the rest of your life, and you're like, oh, come on over to my basement apartment,
Yeah.
But, it worked out well for me because over a 7-year period, I was able to accumulate about $75,000 in equity. And we already had the arrangement with my sister and said, listen, when the time comes and somebody wants out, we'll just get the house appraised and we'll figure it out.
Sure.
So we did. She was able to, refinance the house, pay me the $75,000, and then I was able to buy the house I'm in now. So, was it ideal? No. Did it work? Absolutely. And it was the leverage that I needed to get me to where I am now.
Sure.
And I think if more people can think more long-term like that and say, yeah, I don't want to buy a house and have some roommates, or I don't want to buy a duplex, or I don't want to live in a condo, I want to be in a detached. But yeah, like get in the condo, just get in the game.
Sure.
No matter how you have to do it, just to get that leverage going.
100%. And I mean, I have friends that they all started out in condos, like 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom condos in Hamilton that needed like full renovation. And they went through the process. They bought it, they renovated it, put a ton of work into it, lived there for a year and a half. It's not their ideal, what they wanted, but this is how they got into the game. And then they sold it. They like doubled their money on them because the market was just increasing like crazy. Doubled their money, and then was able to go out and buy like a detached house. And people don't understand. I think like they want the, their end game home, right in the beginning, right? And that's just not how it works,
Yeah, I see it all the time. It's like, oh, I'm 21, I make like $50,000 a year, and I want quartz counters and stainless appliances and a pool and a detached house with a 3-car garage.
Yeah.
Great. Well, you're gonna go live in Alaska. That's the only way you're gonna afford it, right?
Sure.
So,
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's even like buying cars. Your first car is $1,000 car. You don't start off with the $80,000 car sort of thing. So I think it's like lowering your expectations of what you can get into, and that's okay. Like that's where we're all going to start and kind of work our way into real estate. So
yeah, it's about having a master plan, right? You sit down and say, okay, I'm going to get there. How do I get there? That's not step number 1. That might be step number 3. So what do I have to do first and second to get to that point? And, I love sitting down with people and helping craft that plan.
Now, what would you say is advice that you would give to somebody, whether, they're just maybe finished school or whatever case, like what is the best way to get into the market today, 2023? What would you say? Something similar or... Yeah,
absolutely. I love the idea of having a property that you can generate some income from. And so my wife and I were very blessed that about 7 years ago, we were able to build our own custom home, and we have a suite in the basement that we rent out.
Oh,
yeah. So even today, I'm living in our dream home, but our dream home has an income aspect to it because it's very expensive to run a house, like taxes, heat, hydro, mortgage, all that kind of stuff. And I've got 2 kids and they're into crazy activities that cost a stupid amount of money. Right. So to have any kind of an income that can offset your costs, why not? Right.
I'm sure for even being in real estate, having that fluctuation of income, right, from month to month, right, probably helps out those tough times too.
Oh,
right?
yeah. There's been a couple of months that have gone by that money has paid the mortgage and put food on the table. So,
right.
We tried not to rely on that money every month. However, like you said, I'm 100% commission based and, some months are really good and sometimes the economy shifts and things are not great. So having that income is beneficial. And, again, for me, like if you're a young person getting started and you can go get yourself into a nice little duplex, live in the basement for a couple of years because you're going to get more money upstairs. And if that money can help you pay down your mortgage faster or, give you a little bit of equity and take the pressure off, maybe you're living there for 2 or 3 years and then the equity comes up, you can refinance, take the money from that and go buy another one and keep that as a rental. Right?
Sure.
And then you just keep leapfrogging and using those as leverage to buy the next one and the next one. And honestly, you don't have to do it too many times to build up a nice little pool of equity. You do that 2 or 3 times, you could be sitting on a nice chunk of money that you can put down towards your own stuff.
Sure. Right.
So it's just like getting creative, and I think people look at this, buying their first house, the biggest purchase that they're going to make, and just being creative, who else might need a house or is looking to buy, who can I partner up with that might want to purchase a home, and we kind of align and our goals align. And
yeah, I really pride myself on the creativity too when it comes to buying and selling deals. Actually, I learned a bunch of it from your dad. Yeah. He is really creative when it comes to putting deals together.
I know. We got to get him on the podcast.
Yeah. 100%. You know what? I would love to see that. We should get my dad and your dad on the same podcast. That would be amazing.
True. We need a bigger table.
You know what? The creativity, again, I think this is one of those things that a lot of realtors miss out on. And it's hard because when you're getting into it, you just don't know what you don't know. And I feel that I've been able to do well because of the creativity aspect about thinking outside of the box. And it comes to finding the right deals for the right people, and it comes to finding the right funding options for the right people and putting that entire package together. And you've got to be curious. People ask me, how do you do it? Like, how do you maintain that curiosity? I think like a 5-year-old, right? People say, I want to buy a house. Well, why do you want to buy a house? And I just keep asking why do you want to do that? Why? And they just keep telling me, well, this is why, these are my goals. This is what we're trying to get out of it. So the more I learn, the more I can help them understand why they're doing what they're doing. And then I can provide them more options based on that. Actually, there's this really cool technique that I love sharing. And I do a lot of training in my brokerage and coaching and all that kind of stuff with real estate as well. And there's this exercise that I've learned. I call it the 4-5-6. And let's just say, for example, you're going to buy a house, JJ, right?
Right.
Okay. So we meet up and we're going through the whole discussion about buying a house. And I said, okay, what is it that you're looking for in the house that you want to buy, JJ? What's important to you?
Definitely a garage, 2 bathroom, because 1 bathroom's not enough.
Not enough, sure.
And a dining room.
Okay, so what is it about having a garage and the second bathroom and the dining room is really important to you? So I've already asked one question, which is, what do you want? So the next one is, why are those things important to you? So why are those things important to you?
Well, so you don't have to wake up, go downstairs and realize the bathroom's taken and you're already running late for work. That's 1. 2, having a more comfortable place to sit and have dinner, right? Instead of having it on the couch or whatever the case is. And garage just for all the toys, there's never enough space. And I feel like if I had a garage, it wouldn't be big enough.
No, they're never big enough.
They're never big
A buddy of mine's got a 7,000 square foot shop and it's packed. He's like, I should have built it bigger. 7,000 square feet? Are you kidding me?
You should sell a few things.
Yes, you have way too many things.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was question number 2. So now question number 3 would be, okay, so what is it about having a bigger garage would change your lifestyle? And what about, having that dining table to sit with your family rather than the couch? How does that make it better for you in your life?
It just makes it more convenient.
Okay.
Right. Especially right now, like when we sit on the couch, it's the dog's right there looking at us, right? So having a proper table to sit at, you know, so I don't look down and see my dog right there, you know. But yeah, just be more convenient, being more easy accessible, just having more comfortable place to sit, for dinner. But the garage, I mean, you know, I make do with what I have, you know, finding you know, other places to rent out, like storage, for example, right? And I think that comes down to it, like, how can I reduce the cost of what I'm paying for storage that I can utilize in my own? And then it also too comes down to the traveling, right?
The time
to the storage, because some of them are like 20-30 minutes away, and then you got to think of the gas to get there, time, and a lot of times I'm just like, I'm not going to go because it's not here. You know.
Yeah, so then you're not doing stuff because you're like, oh, the tools are there and I got to do it here, so screw it, I'll just do it next week. Or
right.
Yeah. Okay, so that's question number 3. So now question number 4 could be, okay, so imagine now you have your house that has the dining room and, you know, the big shop. You know, how does that lifestyle feel for you, right? Now that you've got all your tools in one place and all your stuff in one place, and you're sitting at the table with your sweetie, and you're not in front of the TV and having the dog look at you in the face trying to eat your fries. Right. You know, how does that feel now that you are there?
Definitely sounds more expensive. That's for sure. You know? Yeah. But you know, I think it just makes it more easier. But then at the same time, I know it would be tougher, right? Because, you know, selling this house or trying to add a second house as like maybe use this one as a rental and then get into the next one. So it's funny because I've already wanted to get into it. Like you and I already talked several times, right? But it's making that second leap, and I'm like, I'm good with what I got. Yeah. You know, and that's what it comes down to. I take a step back. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I don't have the garage, but I can afford the accommodations that I have now. You know, I got to look at my dog eat my dinner, but you know, it's just the way it is right now, right? But I'm living with what's in my means. I'm not trying to overstretch too, right? So you know, settling for what I have is also, you know, I'm grateful for what I got, but. If you could still find me a better house, though, that'd be great.
For the same price.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah. 2% interest rate.
Yeah. There you go. Oh, yeah. For under $500,000. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay,
sure.
so we basically went through 4 questions there, and in a normal situation, I might dig a little bit deeper.
Right.
However, if you take a look at the first response, it's very like 10,000 foot surface level. Well, you know, like I want a bigger shop, I want a dining room, you know, I want another bathroom. Question number 2, it digs a little bit deeper. But once you get to question 4 and then you go like 5 and 6, now you're stripping away sort of the like just the nuts and bolts of why you're trying to do what you're doing, and you're actually making an emotional connection with why you're doing what you're doing. And I've done this exercise with people, and the one was like really powerful. It actually like made me cry because it was a young lady and she wanted to get out of an apartment and into a townhouse. And when we started the questioning, it was like, I want a bigger backyard. Okay, well, why is a bigger backyard important to you? Well, I've got a girl, like a little girl. She's only a year old, but I want to have space for her to play. Okay, well, why is that important to you? Well, I want her to be able to play with her friends and have birthday parties. And all of a sudden it was like, okay, I want a house with a backyard, to like waterworks of tears because she grew up in an apartment. She didn't have a lot of friends when she was a kid because she didn't have anywhere to play and have parties, and she wasn't connected with people. And she felt very isolated from the kids at school, and she didn't want her daughter to grow up like that.
Wow.
And now when I, as a realtor, it sounds like weird, like why would a realtor need to know that kind of thing? But now understanding that's the driving force behind why she's making this decision. When we go look at houses, I walk in there and say, like, can you see you having your kids' birthday parties here? And you can actually sit here in the kitchen and watch your daughter walk to school and go through the park. And like, can you see this being the lifestyle that you want for you and your family? And it's a completely different conversation versus I don't do that with them and just walk in and be like, well, it's a townhouse. It has a backyard. You want a backyard, buy it. Right.
Wow.
And it's not, to me, it's not manipulation. It's not like, I'm not telling people to do something that they don't already want to do. It's just helping them break through that little bit of a barrier that they sometimes have, putting the pieces together and understanding the connection between the two.
And also too, just finding if it's a true need. You
Right.
know, like living in the house I do have, taking consideration the backyard. Like I didn't feel like I needed the backyard, right? But now that I have the backyard, it's actually really nice, and it's a decent backyard. Like I actually throw the ball for my dog to go and catch, right? And that wasn't a thing that I thought about when I did buy the house, but I'm grateful that I got it too, right? So, but yeah, definitely finding people's why and making sure it's an actual why, not just because they want it or whatever the case is too, right? But
It's super, super cool. You know, like it's totally, I never even thought about that, you know, taking someone through the actual emotions. Like, you know, can you see your kids playing outside? You know, how far is school away from where you live and all that kind of stuff. And real estate is very emotional.
Oh yeah. Residential real estate is super emotional for sure.
Sure.
Right.
And it's a physical thing. So it's kind of like connecting the emotional with the physical attributes of that home. And then kind of bringing those two things together and really understanding what they actually want. Because people may say, I want this or that, but really deep down inside, they want something completely different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. One of the biggest challenges I have is when you're working with a couple and they want two different things. That's a real fun one.
yeah,
Oh my God. I want a bungalow. I want a 2-story. I want a side split. Oh my God.
Am I going
Right.
with you or you?
Yeah.
Who has more pull here?
Yeah. Who's the decision maker
Yeah.
here? 'Cause that's going to be important to know.
yeah, true. Who am I talking to?
sure.
Yeah. FYI, 90% of the time, it's the lady of the house.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
you know, because I mean, and you know what's funny too is that everyone's lifestyle changes so fast
Yes.
too. I mean, you know, I bought this house 3 years ago, and I feel like my lifestyle's changed too,
Oh, yeah.
right? So I mean, but it's tough to take in consideration where you're going to be in 5 years, right? And the situations that you're going to go into if they're going to work out for the long term, right? I mean, this house has been great for 3 years, but definitely in 2 to another 3 years, I definitely see myself wanting to get into another locate or new house, bigger house, whatever the case is. But yeah, just because of lifestyle, right?
Yeah, the reality is people move on an average 4 times in their life, right? So they get into the condo as they're getting started, and then they get into a townhouse, right? As they're growing and they need more room, they need, the backyard for the dog and the kids and that kind of thing. And then they have more kids and they're like, well, townhouse is kind of small. Let's get to the detached. And then they do the 30 years in the detached, and then the kids move out and they're off to university, and then they downsize into something. So the reality is people do move an average of 4 times. And same thing with cars. Like I've been through so many cars because they fill the need at the time, and then you're like, well, this is too much car, it's too little car, so I got to
Right.
change for whatever reason.
True.
Same thing.
Now, just to get back to talking about like the real estate license, what it takes, all that stuff. One thing I want to dive into and understand, especially for a lot of people that want to know what it takes to get their license, like what is the steps and requirements to get your real estate license, like education, cost of schooling, stuff like that. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So getting a real estate license today is a little bit more involved than when I went. When I went, it was pretty straightforward. When my dad went, it was like you go write a test and you get your license. It's like getting your fishing license back in the day, right? It's really not a big deal. Now it's a lot more involved. It's actually a college course. So they've taken the education component away from the real estate governing body, and it's now moved into formal education. So you can go to Sheridan, you can go to like up in Barrie, there's colleges up there. So you can find colleges around that offer these courses, and you have to do 5 courses. And there's a split component. Most of it's online, some of it's in person. Very small amount of it's actually in person because they want you to actually write out the contracts and then go through them and make sure it's okay. You can get the whole thing done in less than a year, depending on how crazy you are and you want to just like hammer it and get it done. You can do it in about 6 months.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
But that's like, you don't have anything else on the go and you're just hammering through these courses, and you can blow through them like 1 a month pretty much and get them done.
Sure. Sure.
Cost wise, once you do your education, you also have to register with RICO. And so you're registering with the Real Estate Council of Ontario. You're also registering with the Canadian Real Estate Association. You got to pay your insurance. You've got to sign up with a brokerage, like get your business cards, all that kind of stuff involved. I would say you're probably in the $6,000 to $7,000 neighborhood.
Okay.
Right.
To be like, okay, I'm licensed, I'm ready to go, I can actually go trade houses. So if you're looking to budget that I would say starting with a budget of about $6 or $7 just to do your education. The other thing that you really need to budget for is not making any money for 12 months. Because the reality is, even if you get your real estate license today and you're like, all right, I got my license, let's go. I'm going to go find somebody to help. Even if you find somebody right away, chances are pretty good it might take you 30 to 60 days to actually do a transaction. Then you've got like another 30, 60 days to get that deal to close. And then could be another couple of weeks before you get paid.
Right.
So having a minimum, like absolute bare minimum of 6 months of living expenses covered, whether you're like still working full-time and doing it part-time, that's why a lot of people start that way.
Right.
Or if you can have a year of living expenses banked, knowing that it's going to take a while to get through that process is a really smart way to do it.
Sure.
Otherwise, you're going to dig yourself a pretty deep hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a major why a lot of people fail in real estate. They don't understand that it's going to take 6 to 12 months to maybe get their first deal, and maybe they only get one deal in that amount of time. Yeah. So they either have to have another way to make money, so like another part-time job or full-time job, then they're doing real estate on the side, kind of build up their network, slowly kind of work themselves into it. And then for a lot of people, 2 years in, what was how many people?
80%.
80% will fall
in
off
2 years.
after 2 years. Yeah.
I think a lot of people expect the business to come to them, right? A lot of it.
Oh,
right?
I wish it was that easy.
But like they're getting into it, right? It's like, oh, it's going to be easy. I know friends, family, all that stuff, right? But you don't know if your friends or family are going to buy a house in the next 4 or 5 years, right? So you really got to shove it in people's faces that I'm a real estate agent. If you're looking at a house, contact me. I'm your go-to person, right? And it's funny too, because just being in the car sales industry, how many real estate agents I've met, right? And I get the aspect, contact me if you need a house. I'm like, I'm good. I got the best real estate agent in the game. No need, right? But it's just networking, talking to people, right? And
yeah, actually, that's a really great point. So there's 3,500 agents in the Hamilton-Burlington board.
Okay.
wow.
3,500.
Okay. Wow.
Like, there's a lot of us out there. So I'm sure other than myself, you probably off the top of your head can think of probably 2 or 3 agents that you know as well.
Sure.
So
Right.
that's the thing. Like, we might be friends and have a great connection, but you might already know 2 or 3 other people that you're like, well, I've already done deals with this guy, or this guy's been at it for 20 years, so I'm working with them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of competition out there for us realtors to fight through as well.
True.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, it's a great industry, like if people are into people, it's just a great career to get out there, meet people, get involved in your community, build those connections with people, and ultimately bring value to their lives, help them, through the biggest transaction of their lives. So it's really cool. I actually, back in the day, I was like, man, I should be a realtor.
You know what? It's been an amazing career for me. I'm so glad that I did it.
Yeah,
and, just as an example, when my first daughter was born, it was a train wreck, to be honest with you. And I was able to take off like really 2 months and spend that time at home to help my wife and make sure everything was good at home while we were getting things settled. And you can't do that if you're working at, a career job when you're employed. If you go to your boss and be like, I got to take 2 months off, they'd be like, no, like you can take all your months off and not come back ever again. That's
Right.
okay.
You can kick rocks.
Yeah, exactly. But, being self-employed, it does give you a lot of flexibility when you need it in your life. Right. And the challenge is to not flex yourself right out of the business and be like, oh, I'm going to go golfing and, go to the cottage all summer. Like, you do have to work at some point in time.
Yeah.
The nice thing about it is you get to choose when you get to work.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. And if someone's, in the industry, if they're a newer agent or whatever it may be, and they have all that flexibility, what are some things that you did, in the past to help you kind of make sure that you get all of your work done, that you're out there kind of networking and being super productive with your time?
Yeah. Having a schedule is really important because it's very easy to, I'm just going to put on a Netflix show and all of a sudden it's lunchtime. You're like, well, I haven't gone, taking the dog for a walk. And then all of a sudden the day's over and you're like, well, okay, I'll try again tomorrow. So having a schedule that you just stick to. And, for me, I drive the kids to school every day. I'm back at the house at 8:15. I grab my breakfast, do my thing, 9:00, it's go time. So I've got this routine now that's pretty consistent that allows me to stay focused even when I'm working from home.
Yeah.
One of the other questions that I get a lot too is, if you were starting brand new in the business, or I always think, if I was going to move from, I don't know, here to Halifax where I know 0 people, what would I do to get started again?
Yep.
And for me, it's about building the database, right? It always comes down to just having a place where you can put all your people and their information into so you can stay connected with them. So, I mean, if I was to land in a new city and get my real estate license, I would just be like blinders on. I wouldn't even care about transacting for 6 months.
Sure.
I would just be plowing as many people into the database, whether it's, door knocking, cold calling, networking, community events, open houses. I don't care what it is. It's just about how do I meet people and get them to know who I am as fast as humanly possible. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't do and I see it all the time. People get into the business and they're like, oh, I'm going to create this really amazing logo and I'm going to do this awesome trick website and do all this, Facebook ads and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, okay, that's great, but nobody really gives a crap about your fancy logo. They care about how are you going to take care of them.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
That's what it's about. When people are selling a house, they want it sold fast for the most amount of money.
Yep.
And when they're buying a house, they want to make sure they can buy the house that they want and pay the least amount of money for it with the least amount of pain in the ass through the process.
Sure.
And if you can do that, you're going to get the business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people need to feel so comfortable, with obviously the biggest transaction that they're going to do. And really, understanding who that person is that they're going to be working with and whatnot. So, I mean, that's so important. And I mean, I've been in that space where, we're starting a new venture, a new idea, and we're like, oh yeah, like logo, what's the perfect name? Like, and you spend like weeks on that stuff. And you're like, man, I just need to like get out there, talk with people, talk with partners in the industry that might be able to drive business to you or whatever it may be, and just kind of building those relationships, right? And I think people kind of get so strung up on all these little things that don't really mean too much.
Yeah, there's that weird fear that happens too, right? That fear of looking foolish and the fear of making mistakes and the fear of screwing something up. And, I was guilty of that too, and I still am. Like, it's still something that I'm aware of and I have to really work on. And, the way I look at it now, if I'm going to go door knock in Waterdown where I live, there's 7,500 houses in Waterdown. If I go door knock 100 and make a complete jerk of myself and screw it up and burn those contacts, well, there's still 7,400 more people I can go talk to.
Yeah.
So the best way to get good at it is to actually go out and do it. Right?
Sure.
You can't read a manual on how to ride a bicycle and be like, okay, I've read a book, all about balance and all about speed and cadence and blah, 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 and using the handlebars for turning and leaning and all that stuff. You can read all about it.
Yeah.
But until you actually get on the bike and start pedaling, you can't make it work. You got to get on there. You're going to screw up and fall down and skin your knee, and bad things are going to happen as you're learning. But it's going through the motions and making those mistakes that you're going to be like, oh, okay, that's how I don't do that. I've learned that. Now I have to course correct and figure out how to make it work.
Sure.
Right.
So don't worry about screwing it up. Just go out and do it.
Just do it.
Right. It's the same. It's anything in life, right? Whether you're doing a podcast or making videos or, doing sales or whatever, just pick up the phone and call, go door knock, like screw it up. Just pay attention to what you're doing so that you can learn from it.
Yeah. And we all get ahead of ourselves too, mentally. You used to overthink everything before you actually start. I mean, it was like Cal and I in the first episode, right? It's a huge, and me, I was like, we didn't have our sign here. We didn't have a second camera, all this stuff. I'm like, we just need to hit record and just start talking, like it doesn't matter. Like the sign's going to come. The second camera's going to come. The third camera's coming. Okay. Like there's just stuff that, it's great to have it all, but you got to just do what you have and go. I remember my first sales experience. It wasn't anything special, it was terrible, right? But you learn and it makes you better, makes you sharper. And you know what? If you do a couple sales, you're already ahead of the person that hasn't done it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the person that's beating themselves up because they don't think they're good enough for it or all that stuff. But
I mean, sales is they need to know you, they need to like you, and they need to trust you enough to do business with you.
Sure.
So that's it. Like, I go into a new city, I need people to know me. That's mission number one, blinders on. Number two is taking time to build the like component. And then after that, you start getting people to trust you over time. Then you get to do business with them.
Yeah,
Unreal.
because it's truly a relationship. You know, like I feel like I can call you at any time. You can call me at any time, whether there's an opportunity or whether I'm like, Michael, I see this house. We got to go look at it. Right. It's really, you got to have that relationship with your real estate agent, because if there's an opportunity, you don't want to miss that shot. Right. Because I'm sure a lot of people who don't have a relationship with real estate agents, and they see an opportunity and they're like, who do I call?
Yeah.
Right. And then you don't want to get stuck with a bad real estate agent. I'm not saying any real estate agents are bad, but
I'll say it. There's
okay.
a lot of bad yeah, I'm probably going to get flamed for that one.
Yeah.
But you know what? It comes down to people just not having the passion in a lot of cases, right? They just see real estate as an opportunity to make a quick buck, which is why our numbers skyrocketed in the last couple of years. Right? People are like, oh my God, houses are selling for $2 million. You know, I can make 50 grand selling one house, which is more than I make in a year at my crappy job. So I'll get my real estate license because, you know, for 5 to 7 grand, I can get my license. Sure. So a lot of people get into it, and then they realize how much freaking work it is.
Right.
And yeah, you make the commission, but then you've got, you know, all of your expenses and splits with the brokerage, and, you know, you pay half to the other guy because they bring the buyer to your listing. Like, it gets watered down pretty quickly, and you're like, okay, well, that was great. Now I've got a lot less than I thought. I got to go sell another house, and I got nobody to work with.
Sure.
So it never stops. If you take your foot off the throttle, it's going to be like any other business. Your business is going to die.
Right.
So,
and I guess it's even hard talking about like what an estimated income can be for a real estate agent, because you know, it really comes down to you as a person, your connections, your sales. I mean, but do you have an idea like what a person could make in their first year if they sold, like, let's say 5 houses, 4 houses, or?
Yeah, if you go by the numbers, and I'm really huge on numbers and stats. So if you look at the Hamilton-Burlington board, there's about 3,500 agents, and last year there were about 12,000 houses sold. So that comes down to about 4 deals per agent on average, which sounds okay, because you're like, well, if the average house sells and you make 20 grand in commission, that's $80,000. It's not too shabby. The reality is there's this 80-20 rule that kind of governs pretty much everything in our lives. And in real estate, it's more like the 95-5 rule, where 95% of the houses that are being sold in any area or any brokerage are sold by 5% of the agents.
Wow.
So if you look at the stats, of the 3,500 agents in our board, there's probably about 2,000 of them that have sold 0 houses in the last 12 months, which is staggering. And then you get like another big chunk that sell between 1 and 5 houses. And then really, like, I sold, I don't know, 34, 35 houses last year. And that put me in the top 2% of the 3,500 agents.
Wow.
And I'm not even a team. Like, you start piling into the big teams that are selling 200, 300, 400 houses a year, and they're like the top 0.5% of the agents out there. So, yeah, like, it's a very tricky question to answer, because I've also seen on the other side of things where my buddy Steve got in the business, moved into the area, had a database of literally 0 people, but that guy is a machine when it comes to his business. And in the first 12 months, he did, I think it was like 11 or 12 deals.
Wow.
The next year did like 19 deals. Third year, he's doing like 25 to 30 deals. And for the last 4 or 5 years, he's consistently been one of the top agents in the office. And the guy's making like 300, 400K a year. So is it doable? 100%. Can you get your real estate license and sell 10 houses in the first year? Absolutely, totally doable. I know people that have done it. Is it going to be a lot of work? Absolutely.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not giving up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having a really good plan and a really good understanding of sales definitely is a huge asset and a big help. I think also getting connected with the right people makes a massive difference.
Right.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
You're always going to rise to the level of the people that you surround yourself with. So if you're hanging around with the people that are, you know, oh, well, I got to the office around 10:30, you know, we should go get a coffee. And they come back at, you know, 11:30 and they're like, well, it's almost lunchtime. Let's go grab lunch. And then they start their work maybe around 2. That's not going to cut it. You know what's really funny? Some of my best door knocking success was like middle of February, sideways snow, like just horrible. because everybody's home. Nobody's
Right.
going out anywhere. Everybody's at home honkered down. And I
Right.
knock on the door and like, what are you doing here?
I'm
I said,
committed.
Well, I am so committed to this profession and, helping you sell your home. I'm out here on a day like this.
Right.
Do you want a realtor that is going to work this hard for you when it comes to time for you to buy and sell a home? And they're like, yeah, you're pretty crazy, but I love it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I feel that even though, technology is going to have a bigger impact on our business moving forward, we're already seeing it happen with AI and all that kind of stuff. I still do feel that real estate is a very personal experience, right?
Right.
And having that relationship with people, having the conversation with people where you go to 4 or 5 levels deep to really help them make those connections, I think is always going to be a part of the real estate process. So I feel, at least for the next foreseeable future, real estate agents are going to be a required part of the process.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wow.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I see that too. I mean, it does make a ton of sense, and we've heard of all those. I mean, kind of one size fits all marketing, ways to sell your house and whatnot. And obviously, it's a very emotional purchase. You want to trust the person that you're buying the house from, and having someone kind of in between, making sure that process happens. So, yeah. So, Michael, who do you primarily work with? Is it like first-time home buyers, people that have investment properties, commercial? What's kind of your specialty?
Yeah, if I look at my business, I'm very tight geographically. I work very hard to stick to the Hamilton, Burlington, Waterdown-ish kind of area, so something that would be within like 30 minutes. And I learned very quickly that when I go outside of my physical geographic area, I get into trouble pretty quick because I had a gentleman was looking to buy a house in St. Catharines. I drove out there once and I was like, what am I doing here? I don't know the area. I don't have access to the information. I cannot help you at a really high level, which is what I do. I'm not just a transaction guy. So in order for me to help you at a really high level, I need to stay focused on what I do. So for me, it's staying tight geographically because I do a lot of business in Hamilton, Burlington, Waterdown. I know the inventory. I can tell you all the stats for Waterdown and Burlington. I got that in me. As far as I love working with first-time buyers. It's so fun. It's a lot of work, but there's nothing better than, those people that thought that real estate was not a possibility for them and you make it happen for them. And they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I bought a house. This is amazing. And to see how that changes their life. And same thing with investors too. Helping people buy investment properties and seeing them grow their portfolio and seeing that impact on their life and their kids' lives by having those real estate investments. There's just nothing better than seeing that happen.
Wow.
Sure.
That's great.
Yeah. So the multifamily real estate thing I've done since I was a kid. I was 10 years old and flipping houses, and my dad had rentals, and we managed about 15 doors at the time, and I took care of a lot of that with my dad. So got a lot of experience with that kind of stuff. Sure. Not so much on the commercial side, like big development type stuff a little bit, but not like actual commercial. Like if you want to go buy a building to set up your manufacturing facility, that's like totally separate beast over there.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wow. Now, I know we're going to wrap up the podcast shortly
Yes.
here, but I just one couple questions we wanted to ask. We love asking every guest. If you had to give yourself 20-year-old advice, what would it be?
Buy assets first. Yeah. That would be the number one thing I'm paying a lot more attention to. And what I mean by that is, people, and I did this, I want the house and I want all that stuff, which is great. And now you've got to have the income to pay for it. I'm all about now building passive income. So what can I do, whether it's with my own house, we have the passive income from the basement, right? So everything that I look at spending money on, how do I get a return on that, right? Because I want to have that get to the point where I can just start really backing off and be like, oh, all these passive incomes are paying all my bills. This is great.
Right.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I think if you can focus on building assets first. So as an example, if you want to go buy a car and you've got 50 grand in the bank, a lot of people will just take the 50 grand and go buy the car. But what you can do is you take the 50 grand, you go buy an asset that's going to provide you a return, and then you go lease the car, and then the lease payments are paid by the asset that's generating the return. And then at the end of 8 years, you've got the car and you've got the asset.
Wow.
Sure.
True.
Wow.
right? I think that's a big mind shift for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Sure.
And once you start doing that, that is like a game changer for your life.
And it's delayed gratification, which is like something that we do not get today. You know? I mean, we have instant gratification on our phones. You do something, you get a result. You post a picture, you get likes or comments, whatever it may be. So being disciplined and thinking, you know, top down, how can I do this, you know, in a productive way that's going to make sense for me long term, sort of thing. So makes a ton of sense.
Wow.
Awesome.
And last question, what do you have, or what goals do you have in the next 5 to 10 years?
Next 5 to 10 years for me, two things really. One is I want to have 5 different streams of income. I'm up to 3 right now, working on a 4th. So for me, it's also about not having all of my eggs into one basket, although like real estate's my primary basket, but to have 2 or 3 other things that have stuff coming in. You know, if one thing shifts or the economy shifts in one direction, you still have something coming in over here. So for me, I've realized that people that are like really super wealthy, they don't have one stream of income. They usually have 5. So I'm like, okay, that sounds good. That's what I'm going for.
Right.
Awesome.
Number 2 is I want to get to the point in my life where I'm working because I really love what I do. And I do love real estate. I want to be in a position where I can actually back off and say, well, if I go take a month off, it's no big deal, right? I can take that time off and not have to worry about paying bills. And, you know, I think we're not that far away from that right now. We're very close. So that's the next big goal, is to be like, you know what? Kids are off to university. I'm going to take off from like January to April and not be in Canada.
Right.
Sure.
I'm so tired of the cold.
My body hurts.
Yeah.
Oh, it's tough, man. That mid-February when it's minus 20, I'm just done with
I
it.
know. Even this winter felt like a really long winter. That's for sure.
It did.
Yeah. So that's the goal now is, you know, 5 years, kids are in school. We don't have to support them as much as we do now. And like, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Get me to that, you know, summer weather.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for being part of our show. If anybody's looking for an amazing real estate agent, be sure to contact Michael Domenichetti, and you know, he'll certainly be able to help you find your first house or maybe multiple investment properties. Just want to say a huge thank you to everybody listening and watching today's podcast. Be sure to hit that like button if you like today's video. Also, hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any further content, and we will definitely catch you guys in the next episode. Again, thank you for watching. See you guys.
That was great, man.
That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you.